Devam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakamritam Cha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Well, I'm going to say it again, if you don't mind. You can turn on your video so we can see you. If you have video, if sometimes people don't even have it, but if you can, it would be nice. So I'm not just, talking to a screen with names. So we're doing text number 7. That's correct, Ganapati Govind?
That's right, Prabhuji.
Okay.
3rd chapter.
Oh no. Yeah, 3rd chapter, text 7. Yastrindriyani manasa.
Yastrindriyani manasa
Niyam yarabate juna.
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
Karmendriyai karma yogam.
Karmendriyai karma yogam
Satyasa vishishyate.
Asaktaha savishishyate
Yastrindriyani manasa.
Yastrindriyani manasa
Niyam yarabate juna.
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
Karmendriyai karma yogam.
Karmendriyai karma yogam
Satyasa vishishyate.
Asaktaha vishishyate
Yastrindriyani manasa.
Yastrindriyani manasa
Niyam yarabate juna.
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
Amendriyai karma yogam.
Karmendriyai karma yogam
Sakta savishishyate.
Asakta vishishyate
Yastvindriyani manasa
Yastrindriyani manasa
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
Karmendriyai karma yogam
Karmendriyai karma yogam
Asakta savishishyate
Asakta savishishyate
Yastva indriyani manasa
Yastva indriyani manasa
niyam brayate Arjuna
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
karmendriya karma yogam
Karmendriyai karma yogam
asakta sa vishishyate
Asakta savishishyate Yastva indriyani manasa Niyam yarabate Arjuna Karmendriyai karma yogam Asakta savishishyate
Yastavindriyani manasa
Yastrindriyani manasa
Niyam ya arabhrate Arjuna
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
Karmendriya karma yogam
Karmendriyai karma yogam
Asta va vishishyate
Asakta savishishyate
Yastva indriyani manasa
Yastva indriyani manasa
Niyam yarbhate Arjuna
Niyam yarabate Arjuna
कर्मेन्द्रियाय कर्मयोगम
कर्मेन्द्रियाय कर्मयोगम
असक्तः स विशिष्यते
असक्ता स विशिष्यते
विशिष्यते
यस्तेन्द्रियाणि मनसा
यस्त्वेन्द्रियाणि मनसा
नियमारभते अर्जुन
नियम्याराधतेऽर्जुन
कर्मेन्द्रियै कर्मयोगोऽसक्तः
कर्मेन्द्रियाय कर्मयोगम
असक्तः स विशिष्यते
असक्ता स विशिष्यते
Yaha.
यः
One who.
one
मनहु
Two.
two
But.
but
but
Yani.
इन्द्रियाणि
Senses.
the
the
senses
senses
Manasa.
manasa
मनसा
By the mind.
by
by
the
the
mind
mind
Niyamya.
niyamya
Regulating.
regulating
Arabate.
arabate
Begins.
begins
Arjuna.
Arjuna
Arjuna
O Arjuna.
Arjuna
Arjuna
Karma Indriyai.
karma indriya
Indriyai
By the active sense organs.
by the
by the
active
active
sense
sense organs
Karma Yogam.
Yogam
organs
Devotion.
devotion
Sakta.
asakta
Dakta
Without attachment.
without
without
attachment
attachment
Saha.
Aha
He.
he
he
Vishishyate.
Vishishyate
Vishishyate
By far superior.
is
by
by
far
far
the better.
On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness, without attachment, he's by far superior. So you could repeat after me. On the other hand,
on the other hand
if a sincere person
if a
if a
sincere person
person
tries to control the active senses
tries to
tries to
control the
control
active
the active
senses
senses
by the mind,
by the
by
mind
the mind
begins karma yoga,
and begins karma yoga
Krishna consciousness,
in
in
Krishna
Krishna
consciousness
consciousness
without attachment,
without
without
attachment
attachment
is by far superior.
is by far
are
superior.
superior.
Oh, I'm just, you keep this right here, don't have to change it, but I'm going to just read the previous verse because it says in this verse, on the other hand. So we have to remember what was on the other hand to have on the other hand. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So I'll read the purport. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. I'm going to read it here. It just moves too much for me to try to read it there. Okay. Instead of it becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment. So you become a pseudo-transcendentalist. You're not really a transcendentalist. You're just a pretender. You're externally trying to stop engaging in sense gratification, but actually you're still thinking about it and thinking, feeling willing, you're going to be doing it. So living for sense enjoyment is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from the bondage, from the material bondage, and enter into the kingdom of God. So that's the purpose of life. Get free from material bondage, enter into the kingdom of God. So it's far superior to do that by staying in your same position. Don't try to show off that you're a renunciate, but engage in Krishna service. Let's hear it. The prime svartagati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. So when the goal of self-interest, sometimes, oh, he's just interested in himself. That's, Prabhupada said, it's fine as long as you know who your real self is. So generally, people who are, just interested in themselves, they're very selfish. They don't care about anyone, but that's not spiritually. Can somebody mute everyone, please mute? So this here is the prime svartagati, or goal of self-interest, or is to reach Vishnu. So the spiritual goal of every living entity is to reach Vishnu or Krishna. That's our real self-interest. But problem with people whose self-interest, who are self-interested or selfish, they're usually thinking of themselves as their body, and they want to do things for their own body. That's certainly not recommended. So the whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach the goal of life. You can have a whole class on Varna and Ashrama, but just to go over it, the Varnas, there's 4 Varnas, 4 Ashramas. There's the Brahmins, there's the Kshatriyas, there's the Vaishyas, there's the Shudras. Brahmins are like priestly, intellectual class. Kshatriyas are like the administratives, warriors, policemen. People are in the government, but they generally will do more than just, like, if you look at the kings who ruled the world, or who ruled, even if they didn't rule the whole world, ruled a great part of the world. They were kings. But when there was a fight, they would go out and fight. They don't just stay in their little cubicle and send somebody else out to fight. So these were Kshatriyas. Then there's the Vaishyas. They're mercantile, business, trade, and cow protection, agriculture. It's not just cowboys, but they protect the cows. And even King Parikshit, he saw a Shudra beating a cow, and he was going to kill the Shudra for beating a cow. Imagine if he was here now and they slaughter millions of cows. One cow was being beat, and or bull, or cow and a bull, and the king was going to kill him, but then he surrendered to the king. He asked for a place to go. He said, well, you can go anywhere where they're committing, illicit sex, gambling, taking intoxication, or eating meat. You can go there. That's all. And then Kali said, there's no place in your kingdom where that's going on. So there's, this is the age of Kali personified. There was no place, and you have to give me some place. He said, okay, you can go where there's hoarding of gold, where people are hoarding money, gold. Then you can go there. And that's where Kali Yuga found the spot, because there were some people hoarding gold at that time. They didn't do anything else wrong, but they were hoarding gold, and that's where Kali Yuga began. So these 4 Varnas there. We certainly have businessmen, and we have somewhat Kshatriyas, and we really don't have the Vaishyas. We have that part of the Vaishya. We don't have the part that protects cows. We have a few, But we really have to try to work on that. We have to get some land and get some cows and protect them, let them live the natural life. And the Shudras are the servants of all the other groups. And you'd be surprised what would be considered a Shudra, because generally, like the highest thing that most people want their children to be is a doctor, and a doctor is more of a Shudra, which I wouldn't mind being that Shudra in this age, but that's what it is. But a Brahmin is the highest, the priestly class, someone who teaches other people about spiritual life. That's the highest. So then there's the ashrams. There's the brahmachari. The brahmachari is just a boy or a man, young man generally, and he's celibate and he serves the guru. He generally lives in the guru's ashram, and he does service, and the guru teaches him things about, different topics. If we look, Krishna learned, I think, 64 different things when he was in the school of Sanapani Muni. Then there's the grihastha. Then the brahmachari, at a certain point, he can get married. He's celibate, but he can get married. Or he can stay a brahmachari for his whole life. But generally, they get married and they live together, husband and wife, and happily ever after, or something like that, or at least as long as it can last. Of course, and nowadays it doesn't even last long. Previous years ago, it lasted a lifetime. Even if you had happy or not happy, it didn't matter. There was no question of divorce. It was like that didn't enter into the brain. Now it's immediately enters into the brain when there's some difficulty. We'll just get divorced. And if you can see movie stars who are Shudras, they get divorced a lot. They get married so many times and divorced, married. We had this one man who used to, he plowed snow for us. He used to go to Dulal Krishna's store, and he stopped plowing snow because his wife left him and he was fried. But he had about 3 or 4 different wives. It's just not a devotee, just some karmi. But he was in Dulal Krishna's store one time. Dulal Krishna's not on this, so I could talk about him. He asked Dulal Krishna, he said, how is it? You people, you come from India, and then you open a store, and you got you have everything. And he said, how do you do it? And Dulal Krishna responded by saying, we don't pay child support and alimony. And the guy, he liked that answer. Because we just get one wife and we stay with her, and that's that.
I was going to say, and my one wife works very hard in my store.
Yes. And that's why we stay together. No, he didn't say that part.
I know, I'm sure he did.
He did say that's why we can do that, because we're trying to follow more Vedic culture. Even there was there's a lot of jokes about how when men, big shot men, to get divorced and their wife gets half of what they have, and there's a lot of jokes about that. But anyway, so then you get to be a householder, and you can stay as a householder, or generally recommended when you're older, you would take, first of all, vanaprastha, where you travel with your wife and preach and visit holy places. And then after that, you take sannyas, and your wife stays home with the oldest son, takes care of her, and your man takes sannyas and just preaches, travels and preaches, lives simply. So those are the different orders, varnas, ashrams, and it says the whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. The goal of life is Svarta Gati, or this is to reach Vishnu. That's basically the goal of life. So a householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada's not telling us to give up, falsely renouncing our position and then, maybe becoming a sannyasi and then falling down. Better you stay as a householder. You can go back home, back to Godhead as a householder. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a householder. He never took sannyas. So a householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. So you do some regular service. You have to do service. We all do service by chanting Hare Krishna. That's service in itself. But Prabhupada had devotees do a lot more than just chant Hare Krishna. Hearing and chanting is service. We're also associating by these classes. That's hearing and chanting. But we should try to do some service, prepare some preparations for Krishna, offer it to Krishna with love and devotion. So for self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. So don't be attached. So what does it mean, don't be attached? Don't be attached to the fruits of your labor. Don't be attached to your money. Use some of your money for spreading Krishna consciousness. So a sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. So it's better than somebody who's pretending to be a sannyasi. When I say pretending, meaning that in his heart, in his mind, he's not really qualified, but he acts just like an actor on a stage. Better to be a sincere householder, do some service for Krishna at the temple, and chant the holy names than being a pretender's false sannyasi. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. I don't see this very much, but I'm sure it's there in India, and there may be Indian people here now doing the same thing. I'm sure there are. I even know somebody who was a devotee, and he's using it to exploit people. Not a very good devotee, but he's a devotee. He was initiated, and not this temple. I don't even know for sure what temple he was at. But he also caused a lot of problems in temples that he has been in.
What do you mean? Was teaching meditation or something?
No, he teaches Krishna consciousness, but his point is to exploit people, get money from them. And say he's going to do this and that, and then he doesn't do those things. So better you're just a sincere sweeper in the street than such a person. And I'm sure there are a lot of others in other organizations. I only know one in ISKCON that was doing that, and was kind of, as far as we know, stopped from doing it anymore. But I'm sure there are a lot of other organizations, people who make a living out of this. And some people make a really good living at this. I heard Prabhupada he was at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. Anybody here has been to the Bhaktivedanta Manor?
I have.
Who's that?
This is Geetmala.
You've been there?
Yes.
When?
I don't know, about 5 years ago.
Wow, good. Well, I've been there too. Nobody else has been there?
I think Madhav Gopal has been there.
Yeah, but they're not on, so they don't count.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's really nice. This was the place that George Harrison had purchased for the devotees. So Prabhupada's being interviewed there. And the reporter says, we hear that you get your money, by donations or something like that, by donations. Prabhupada said yes. And he said something, I don't remember so much, but I remember what Prabhupada said. Prabhupada told him, do you think that if you worked your whole life, you would be able to afford a place like this? And he said, no. And he says, but we don't work, and we got this place. So, of course, Prabhupada doesn't use anything for sense gratification. He uses everything for Krishna, for spreading Krishna consciousness. That's where Prabhupada doesn't even just want a temple open just to worship the deities. He wants the temple open to spread Krishna consciousness. You worship the deities is part of it, but if you're not spreading Krishna consciousness, what's the purpose? You have to be actively trying to teach others about Krishna. So better to be a sincere sweeper in the street. That means pretty much anybody, no matter what kind of occupation you have. Better you do that than you try to be the charlatan, show how great you are spiritually. Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments? Well, I have a question then. I'm asking, this question is for those who do not have their video cameras on. Why don't you have your video cameras on?
Because we are afraid you might be scared looking at us.
That's all right. I don't have to look at everybody.
With our hair standing up.
You can get like a little cutout of yourself and just move it back and forth a little.
So I have a question, bro.
Yes.
So, no, you said that we should not, or I heard you said that, if please correct me if I'm wrong, that we should not get attached to money, but it's so difficult. When you have even $100, it's not easy to not get attached. So how to not get attached to money?
I think if you give it to me.
I should not have asked that question.
That will help you become detached.
Didn't you hear him say?
I'm really detached.
Pyari, didn't you say at the beginning of the lecture that in this age it might be okay to be a Shudra and make money?
No, I didn't say that, but it's okay to be a Shudra. It's fine to be a Shudra, just as long as you're serving Krishna. Anybody can be a devotee. Doesn't matter what particular varna they're in. They can be a pure devotee doing Shudra work. It doesn't matter. No, how do you become detached? I mean, normally lots of times I talk, from experience, but my experience, honestly, I was never very attached to money. I mean, when I moved in, I gave all my money to the temple, gave all my, equipment, photo equipment, stereo equipment, and I didn't bother me at all. I don't know. I know some people are very attached, some people are not so attached. I don't know how. I guess the real thing is, which wasn't my case, because I wasn't really well, maybe it was my case too, is become attached to Krishna. I wasn't really attached to Krishna because I didn't really know Krishna so well. But I was attached more to God. You know, I just hitchhiked around the country. I just lived real simple. But I think that's the best way to become. It's not just money, because I'm attached to other things. I'm attached to money too. It's not like I'm not attached, but it's not that big of a deal. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't lost any yet. But I guess, please, Krishna, don't try to test me now that take everything away. And everyone sees, oh, he's just a hypocrite. Look how he's so disturbed now. But I think it's not just money. Everybody's attached to things, material things. Some people are very attached to money. That wasn't really so much my case, but I'm certainly attached to things. It's not necessarily money. But how do you become detached from anything? People have different things they're attached to. And the only way to become detached from this material world is by becoming attached to Krishna. You know, Krishna, it's all going to be taken away sooner or later. So we just don't be attached. And when you give to Krishna, you're never the loser. I mean, you have to become convinced of these things. And then if you know, you can always become a brahmachari and move into the temple. And we'll help you to become detached. You know, but I think that the real answer is, to the degree in which we become attached to Krishna, to that degree we become detached from this world. Everybody is attached. You have to be attached to something, either material or spiritual. So we have to change that attachment from material to spiritual. And Prabhupada has given us this program of having these classes, hearing and chanting about Krishna, chanting the holy names of Krishna. These things will help us become detached from this material world. I don't think you're that detached anyway, Nanda Gopal. Not for money anyway. But I mean, we have different attachments, so I'm sure we're attached somewhat, because we're all attached. People attached to their wife. People attached to their children. Now, how can
Prabhu, he's attached to service.
Well, he does do a lot of service. Anyway, we'll get into that at the end of class at this time. But we're all attached to something. Even children, you know, how can you not be attached to your children or your grandchildren? You have to be attached. You don't have to be, but generally you are. And how would your children grow up if you weren't even attached to them? You know, like they fall down, they get hurt, and you just don't have any feelings at all. That's pretty cold-hearted. So even Prabhupada does say, you know, children, wife, home, and the rest. They're natural objects of attachment. So it's naturally to be attached to them. But if they interfere with your Krishna consciousness, if they stop you from being Krishna conscious, then you should give them up. Otherwise, there's no reason to give them up. And he also talks about the family. If you hear classes morning and evening from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, you chant Hare Krishna, you worship the deities, you offer prasadam, then you can live happily as in a family. There's no need to renounce. You know, but if things are so difficult, then you may have to renounce. If they're stopping you, not making it a little hard for you to become Krishna conscious, because everybody makes it hard for you to become Krishna conscious. Chanting around, somebody calls on the phone and you talk to them and you're stopping your rounds, it's making you harder, but it's your service, your duty, whatever. So there are natural objects of affection, attachment. It's there. So just become attached to Krishna. And Prabhupada has given us the process for becoming attached. Hearing and chanting, following the rules, regulated principles, chanting around, doing service. Just keep doing those things. It doesn't happen in a moment. You know, we have a whole life to become fully Krishna conscious. And that's what the whole purpose of life is. It's not like you've done it for a year and you're not Krishna conscious yet, you're still attached. And as you go, if you can remember, you know, if you're doing it for several years, you're becoming a little less attached. So you don't have to try to artificially become detached. You'll become detached just by following this process, because by following this process, you'll become Krishna conscious. And then you'll become attached to Krishna. And then you'll automatically become detached from everything else. So don't try to make a special, separate endeavor to get, I mean, unless you want to do the first plan I mentioned. If you remember what that was.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
When you become attached to if you love your grandson the most, then think of him as Krishna, and then worship like that. Then you will get Krishna. If you love your grandson the most, or whoever you love, you can imagine him as Krishna, and then pray to him. Then you'll get Krishna, attached to Krishna.
Well, philosophically, we can understand that your grandson, your son, your wife, your husband, whatever it may be that you love the most, you're very attached to. We don't see him as Krishna because he's not Krishna. He's a servant of Krishna. We can see him as a pure spirit soul. As a pure spirit soul, he's absolutely perfect in every way. So we can see him as an eternal servant of Krishna, a pure servant of Krishna. So we can serve him in that way and try to encourage him to be a servant of Krishna. Try to encourage him to chant Hare Krishna. So we don't artificially become detached. Being attached to your grandson is a totally natural, acceptable thing. But we shouldn't really see him as Krishna because he's not Krishna.
Yes.
He's a servant of Krishna, just like you are a servant of Krishna.
Yes,
and I am a servant of Krishna.
Right.
Right. But to think of Krishna when you see him is okay. Like he seems so pure. Or Krishna sometimes does this, and your grandson does this, and it reminds you of Krishna. That's okay. And you try, the best thing you can do is to try to help your grandson not to have to take birth again in this material world, but to go back to Godhead at the end of this life. And then you can be with him eternally.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, anybody else? Read the verse again. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So without attachment to the material or to the results, you offer the results to Krishna. Okay. No other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
I had a quick question.
I'll see if I can give a long answer.
Okay, let me ask a very long question so that the time is so you were talking about that how in the Vedic times there was no divorce, but now you can get divorced. So how did I mean, we know that even in the devotee community, even when Prabhupada was here, there were so many cases of divorce. So how did Prabhupada deal with those things? Like, what was his guidelines about when is it okay for devotees to get divorced, and when it is not okay?
I think that he kind of just gave up on these devotees. You know, it's like they should know what to do. They know what to do. They know what I want, but they're not doing it. So I'm not getting involved. Let them do what they want. And the same thing is going on today. Also, you know, we have different gurus like Naranjana Swami, and some of his disciples are getting divorced, and it's like he just doesn't get involved. He doesn't really get involved in the marriages because then they get divorced. You know, he just lets them do what they want. He'll give his blessings, but what can you do? So I think he really didn't get too much involved. I know, you know, sometimes a devotee may ask if it's okay to do this. And in one case, because the devotee was going to do it, no matter what Prabhupada said, yes, it's okay. Because that way, his sinful reaction won't be as bad. If he just gets a divorce, that's going to be a sinful reaction. But if he disobeys the spiritual master, that's a greater sinful reaction. So rather than him having that sinful reaction, Prabhupada told one person that you can get divorced. And actually, the reason we know why he told them is because Shrutikirti, Prabhupada's servant, was there. And he was thinking, why is Prabhupada telling him he can give him divorce? And the whole day, it was bothering him. And then in the evening, he was massaging Prabhupada. And then he said he couldn't even tell him to his face, but when he started massaging his back, then he told him about how come you did this. And Prabhupada said, well, you know, it's America. A lot of people do this. You know, that's just kind of like what they do now. And Shrutikirti didn't really accept that so much. He said, but Srila Prabhupada, you said, and then Prabhupada told him. So in other words, even in the beginning, he didn't want to he didn't want to even tell anybody else about why he's given him permission. And he said, because he was going to do it anyway. And then he would have committed guru aparad, which is a greater offense. So that's why he told him. But even he was still sticking up for the guy to somebody else of why he said it. Prabhupada wasn't concerned with himself. He was concerned with everyone else. I mean, that's really, really, really highly elevated. There's pretty much nobody's at that platform besides Prabhupada.
But our gurus do that too now. Niranjan Maharaj said there was like a Russian lady who wanted to get married to a Muslim guy, because in Russia, it's very hard to find husbands, I mean, for women. And there was this very wealthy guy who wanted to marry this devotee girl. And he didn't want to say no because it would be Guru Aparad, and he knew that she had an inclination to do it anyway. So the same thing.
It's not the same thing. It's
No?
not really sinful to marry a Muslim. Where does it say it's sinful to marry a Muslim?
But she was a devotee. I don't know if she could have.
I know,
she could
it's
have
not
followed everything.
Of course, but you could still be a devotee. Devotees are married to Christians.
Right, I
but they may
guess
be
so.
not.
But,
I'm just saying,
I mean, I don't think he was very.
marrying a Muslim is not as bad as getting a divorce. As far as that is, you can't do that because you can make a Muslim a devotee.
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't think he was very favorable towards it, but he knew she was going to do it
Oh,
anyway.
I know, and I know Naranjana, I know that whole thing, and I know Naranjana Swami did allow her to do it because he can't tell her no, she's gonna do it anyway.
Right.
So why should he? Yeah. But it's still what Prabhupada told. I only told you half of the story with Prabhupada. It was, he asked Prabhupada, can I divorce my wife and marry this other woman? And Prabhupada said yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and Shrutakirti was so, I mean, I would be disturbed, but it's good that he asked them. And then we found out more of how great Prabhupada is, not caring about himself. Yeah, and that devotee woman who married, I don't know if they may have gotten divorced or she's not a devotee, but I know didn't turn out very well. Marrying a Muslim.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think she's now, anyway. I don't know much more about it, but I know that's what I was told. But he
It's
has
not-
a hard time because he has a lot of Russian devotees who materially, they don't have a good situation. And they have to do, get married or, I don't know. Anyway, he doesn't get too involved in marriages because of things like this. Okay, so what was your question, Ganapati Govind?
You answered it, Prabhuji.
I don't remember.
Question was, how did Prabhupada deal with divorce cases?
Oh, okay. Oh, that's why I got on that subject. Thank you.
But he was never favorable towards it, though. He
He
didn't.
said there's no such thing as divorce.
Yeah, he said that.
He's 100%. You can't be more against it. It's like it doesn't exist. You can't. That's not an option. He says in India, the woman would get very upset. They take their bangles, they throw them down, which is a really bad thing. You better look out. They throw their bangles, and and they argue with each other. But he said, but there's no question of divorce. This is your karma. You just deal with it.
So if you have a bad spouse, that's your karma and you have to deal with it for the rest of the life.
You have bad what?
If you have a bad spouse, then it's your bad karma that is coming to you.
Well, it's going to end either at death or the husband takes sannyas, maybe earlier in 50.
Yeah, and Upendra, don't you remember in the Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita, Upendra, one of his first early devotees, wants a wife, and Srila Prabhupada looks down on the street and he says, pick one, any woman. He goes, there is no, and his exact words were, there is no love in this material world. Love is for Krishna. So it doesn't really matter who you marry. So he says.
Boy,
So even if you divorce, if you think you're going to find a wonderful situation in this material world, it ain't going to happen.
Well, he sure takes all the fun out of it. Pick anyone. There's no love in this material world. Ain't gonna be any difference.
Exactly.
Well, when you look at it that way, why bother? Yeah, but anyway, not everybody has problems, whether they're married or they're not married. There's difficulties.
Those are the words that made me stick to my husband. I read that when I was like very early on. Leelamrita was one of the very first books I read.
What's it? So many nice things. Well, I like to think of the funny things he said. Okay, I think we can end class if nobody has any questions, and you guys can get to bed 6 minutes earlier. No other questions? Okay, let's offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord.
Manchakrapatarabhishya
Kripa
Kripasindhubhyo
Sindhu Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Varebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Namo Namaha
Sakoti
Namstakoti
Vaishnavanda Ki
Vaishnavanda Ki
Jai
Jai Srila
Srila Prabhupada
Prabhupada
Ki
Ki
Jai
Jai His Grace Pyari Mohan
Hare
Prabhu
Mohan
Ki
Prabhu
Jai
Ki Jai Hare Krishna everyone.
All glories to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. We'll recite the 1869. Nachatasman manusheshu kasmin kaschinme priyakatkrutmaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschinme priyakatkrutmaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritmaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritmaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritmaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Hare Krishna. Sunita Mataji, would you like to recite next?
Yes, Prabhuji. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschinme priyakritamaha bhavita nachame tasmadanyaha priyataro bhuvi nachatasman manusheshu kaschinme priyakritamaha bhavita nachame tasmadanyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschinme priyakutamaha bhavita nachame tasmadanyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschinme priyakutamaha bhavita nachame tasmadanyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschinme priyakutamaha bhavita nachame tasmadanyaha priyataro bhuvi. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Deepti Mataji, would you like to recite?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavitana cha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. Translation: There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Haribol Prabhuji.
Haribol Mataji. Anuchinda Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavita nacha me tasmat anya priyataro bhuvi. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavita nacha me tasmat anya priyataro bhuvi. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavita nacha me tasmat anya priyataro bhuvi. Nacha tasman manusheshu kashin me priyakritamaha bhavita nacha me tasmat anya priyataro bhuvi. Nacha tasman manusheshu kashin me priyakritamaha bhavita nacha me tasmat anya priyataro bhuvi. Nacha tasman manusheshu kashin me priyakritamaha भवितः न च मे तस्मात् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Jairam Prabhu, would you like to say next?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कच्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्माद् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कच्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्माद् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कच्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्माद् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कच्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्माद् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कच्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्माद् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Janvi Rani Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कश्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्माद् अन्यः प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कश्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्मान् अन्यः प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कश्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्मान् अन्यः प्रियतरो भुवि. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear.
न च तस्मात् मनुष्येषु कश्चित् मे प्रियकृतं भविता न च मे तस्मात् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मात् मनुष्येषु कश्चित् मे प्रियकृतमः भविता न च मे तस्मात् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मात् मनुष्येषु कश्चित् मे प्रेमकृतं भविता न च मे तस्मात् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मात् मनुष्येषु कश्चित् मे प्रियकृतं भविता न च मे तस्मात् अन्य प्रियतरो भुवि. There is no servant in the world more dear to me that is me than he, nor will there be ever be one or more dear. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Anybody would like to recite? Anybody else?
You want to recite one more time, Prabhuji?
Yeah, you can, Mataji. Yes, please.
That's what you asked, Prabhuji?
Yeah, no, you can recite. And then I was asking if anybody else is also there.
Oh, okay. That's okay, Prabhuji. Yeah.
No, if you would like to recite, we have time, Mataji. Please go ahead.
न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कश्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्मादन्यः प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कश्चिन् मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्मादन्यः प्रियतरो भुवि. न च तस्मान् मनुष्येषु कश्चिन्मे प्रियकृत्तमः भविता न च मे तस्मादन्यः प्रियतरो भुवि. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much, everyone, for reciting. I will recite the same verse again tomorrow one more time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I start?
Yes, Mataji, before you start, we just wanted to dedicate our prayers for today for the quick recovery with Krishna's will of Rastas Prabhu's mother and his brother, Ganpati Govind Prabhuji's family, and Sudhi Priya Mataji and Gita Mala Mataji's mother, and all our congregational devotees, families.
Prabhuji, if I may interrupt you, Pankajangri Prabhu is
Yes, I
seriously
was.
ill in Mayapur.
Yes,
oh, you're
sir.
going to come to that. Okay, sorry. I
Yes,
thought you
Mataji.
missed that.
No, thanks for reminding, Mataji. I was just about to say, we also heard about Prabhuji, and we should, chant with all our heart. So let us dedicate all our prayers for the quick recovery for all of them. And with that, Mataji, you may start. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Prabhuji. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminithi Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narsimha Kavacham Vakshe Prahladenoditam Pura Sarvarakshakaram Punyam Sarvopadravanashanam Sarvasampatkaram Chaiva Swargamoksha Pradayakam Dhyatva Narsimham Devesham Hema Simhasanastitam Vivratasya Trinayanam Sharadindu Samaprabham Lakshmiya Lingita Vamangam Vibhuti Berupashritam Chaturbhujam Komalangam Swarna Kundala Shobhitam Saroja Shobhito Raskam Ratnakeyura Mudritam Tapta Kanchana Sankasham Pita Nirmala Vasasam Indradi Suramaulishta Spuran Manikya Deeptibihi Virajita Padadvandvam Shanka Chakradi Hetibihi Garutmata Cha Vinayat Stuyamanam Mudanvitam Swarat Kamala Samvasam Krutva Tu Kavacham Patet Narsimho Me Shirapatu Lokaraksharta Sambhavaha Sarva Gopi Stambhavasa Phalam Me Rakshatu Dvanim Narsimho Me Drishau Patu Soma Surya Agnilochanaha Smritam Me Patu Naraharihi Munivaryastuti Priyaha Nasam Me Simhanashastu Mukam Lakshmi Mukapriyaha Sarva Vidyadipah Patu Narsimho Rasanam Mama Vaktram Patva Induvadanam Sada Prahalada Vanditaha Narsimha Patu Me Kantam Skanda Bhuvaradananta Krat Divyastra Shobhita Bhujaha Narsimha Patu Me Bhujau Karav Me Deva Varado Narsimha Patu Sarvataha Hrudayam Yogi Satyascha Nivasam Patu Me Harihi Madhyam Patu Hiranyaksha Vaksha Kukshi Vidaranaha Nabhim Me Patu Naraharihi Swanabhi Brahma Samstutaha Brahmanda Kotaya Katyam Yasya Patu Me Katim Guhyam Me Patu Guhyanam Mantranam Guhya Rupadruk Uru Manobhava Patu Januni Nararupadruk Jange Patu Darabara Hattayo Samrukeshari Suraraja Pradah Patu Padav Me Narharishwaraha Sahasra Sirsha Purusha Patu Me Sarvashastanum Manograha Purvata Patu Mahavira Grajognitaha Mahavishnur Dakshinetu Mahajwalastu Nairutaha Paschime Patu Sarvesho Dishime Sarvato Mukaha Narsimha Patu Vayavyam Saumyam Bhushana Vigraha Ishanyam Patu Bhadrome Sarva Mangaladayakaha Samsara Vayatah Patu Mrutyor Mrutyanrakeshari Idam Narsimha Kavacham Prahlada Mukamanditam Bhaktimanyaha Patin Naityam Sarva Papai Pramuchyate Putravan Dhanavan Loke Digayurupajayate Yam Yam Kamayate Kamam Tam Tam Prapnotya Samshayam Sarvatra Jayam Apnoti Sarvatra Vijayi Bhavet Bhumyantariksha Divyanam Grahanam Vinivaranam वृश्चिकोरगसम्भूता विशापाहरणं परं ब्रह्मराक्षसयक्षाणां दूरोत्सारणकारणं भुजे वा तालपत्रे वा कवचं लिखितं शुभं करमूले धृतं येन सिद्ध्येयुः कर्मसिद्धयः देवासुर मनुष्येषु स्वं स्वमेव जयं लभेत् एकसन्ध्यं त्रिसन्ध्यं वा यः पठेन्नियतो नरः सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्यं भुक्तिं मुक्तिं च विन्दति द्वात्रिंशत्सहस्राणि पठेत् शुद्धात्मनं रणं कवचस्य मन्त्रस्य मन्त्रसिद्धिः प्रजायते अनेन मन्त्रराजेन कृत्वा भस्माभिर्मन्त्रणं तिलकं बिभ्र्याद्यस्तु तस्य ग्रहभयं हरे त्रिवारं जपमानस्तु दत्तं वार्याभिमन्त्र्य च प्रसायेद् यो नरो मन्त्रं नरसिंहाध्यानमाचरेत् तस्य रोगा प्रणश्यन्ति एचस्यु कुक्षिसम्भवः किमत्र बहुनोक्तेन नरसिंहा सदृशो भवेत् मनसा चिन्तितं यत्तु स तच्चाप्नोत्य संशयम् गर्जन्तं गर्जयन्तं निजभुजपटलं स्फोटयन्तं हतन्तं दीपयन्तं तापयन्तं दिवि भुवि दितिजं क्षेपयन्तं क्षिपन्तं क्रन्दन्तं रोषयन्तं दिशि दिशि सततं संहरन्तं भरन्तं वीक्षन्तं पूर्णयन्तं करनिकरसतैर्दिव्यसिंहं नमामि दिव्यसिंहं नमामि दिव्यसिंहं नमामि इति श्री ब्रह्माण्डपुराणे प्रह्लादोक्तं श्री नरसिंहकवचं सम्पूर्णम् श्री 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 विघ्न विनाशक नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय भक्त प्रहलाद महाराज की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna. I'm going to recite Brahma Samhita. गोलोकनां निजधाम्नि तले च तस्य देवी महेश हरिधाम श्रुतेषु तेषु ते प्रभावनिश्चय विहितश्च येन गोविन्दमादिपुरुषां तमहं भजामि सृष्टि स्थिति प्रलय साधन शक्तिरेका चाएव यस्य भुवनानि बिभर्ति दुर्गा इच्छानुरूपमपि यस्य च तिष्ठतेष गोविन्दमादिपुरुषां तमहं भजामि क्षीरं यथा दधि विकार विशेषयोगात् संजायते न हि तथा पृथगस्ति हेतो यः सम्भूतमपि तथा समुपैति कार्यात् गोविन्दमादिपुरुषां तमहं भजामि दीपार्चिरे वहि दशानन्तरम् अभुपेत्य दीपायते त्रिवृतहेतु समान धर्मा यस्तदृगे वहि च विष्णुतया विभाति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यः कारणार्णवा जले भजति स्म योग निद्रामनन्त जगदण्ड सरोमकूपः आधार शक्तिमवलम्ब्य परं स्वमूर्तिं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषां तमहं भजामि यः कारणार्णवा जले भजति स्म योगा निद्रामनन्त जगदण्ड सरोमकूपः आधार शक्तिमवलम्ब्य परं स्वमूर्तिं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषां तमहं भजामि यस्यैकनिश्वासितकालमत्वलम्ब्य जीवन्ति लोमविलजा जगदण्डनाथः विष्णुर्महान् सह्यस्य कलाविशेषो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषां तमहं भजामि भास्वान् यथाश्म सकलेषु निजेषु तेजः स्वीयं कियत् प्रकटयति अपि तद्वदत्र ब्रह्मा य एष जगदण्डविधानकर्ता गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यत्पादपल्लवं युगं विनिधाय कुम्भ दण्ड्वे प्रणाम समयेश गणाधिराजः विघ्नान् विहन्तुमलमास्य जगत्त्रयस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अग्निर्मही गगनमम्बुमरुद्दिशश्च कालस्तथात्ममनशीति जगत्त्रयानि यस्माद् भवन्ति विभवन्ति विशन्ति यं च गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यच्चक्षुरे सशविता सकलग्रहाणां राजा समस्तसुरमूर्तिरशेष तेजः यस्यज्ञया भ्रमति संवृतकालचक्रो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि धर्मोऽतपापनिश्चयश्रुतयस्तपांसि ब्रह्मादिकीटपतगावदयश्च जीवः यद्दत्तमात्रविभव प्रकटप्रभाव गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यस्त्वि इन्द्रगोपमथवेन्द्रमहो स्वकर्मा बन्धानुरूपफलभाजनमातनोति कर्माणि निर्दति किन्तु च भक्तिभाजं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यमक्रोधकामसहजा प्रणयादिभित्ति वात्सल्यमोह गुरुगौरवसेव्य भाव दिशं पुरेते गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि श्रियकान्तकान्त परमपुरुषा कल्पत्रयो ध्रुमावुमेश्चिन्तामणि गणमयि तोयममृतं कथगानं नाट्यं गमनमपि वंशी प्रियसखी चिदानन्दं ज्योति परमपि तदश्वत्यमपि च यत्रिषिराब्धिः श्रवति सुरभिभाष्य च सुमहान् निमेषार्धाख्यो वा व्रजति नहि यत्रापि समय भजे श्वेतद्वीपं तमहं इह गोलोकमिति यं वेदान्तस्य सन्ताशितिविरालकटिपये ईश्वर परमकृष्ण सच्चिदानन्द विग्रह अनादिरादिर गोविन्द सर्वकारण कारण श्री श्री ब्रह्म संहिता की जय हरे कृष्णा
Lowest of all is located Devi Dham, mundane world. Next above it is Mahesh Dham, abode of Mahesh. Above Mahesh Dham is placed Haridham, abode of Hari, and above them all is located Krishna's own realm named Goloka. I adore the prime evil Lord Govinda, who has allotted their respective authorities to the rulers of those spirit realms. The external potency Maya, who is of the nature of the shadow of the Chit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself. Just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect curd is neither same as nor different from its cause, who is milk. So I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Shambhu is a transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. The light of one candle being communicated to other candles, although it burns separately in them, is the same in its quality. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who exhibits himself equally in the same mobile manner in his various manifestations. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who, assuming his own great subjective form, who bears the name of Shesh, replete with all accommodating potency and reposing in the causal ocean with the infinity of the world in the pose of his hair, enjoys creative sleep, Yoga Nidra. Brahma and other lords of the mundane worlds appearing from the pose of hairs of Mahavishnu remain alive as long as the duration of one exhalation of the later Mahavishnu. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whose subjective personality Mahavishnu is the portion of portion. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom the separated subjective portion Brahma receives his power for the regulation of the mundane world, just as the sun manifests some portion of his own light in all the effulgent gems that bear the names of Suryakanta, etc. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, whose lotus feet are always held by Ganesh upon the pair of tumuli protruding from his elephant head in order to obtain power for his function of destroying all the obstacles on the path of progress of the three worlds. The three worlds are composed of the 9 elements, which fire, earth, ether, water, air, direction, time, soul, and mind. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom they originate, in whom they exist, and into whom they enter at the time of universal cataclysm. The sun, who is the king of all the planets, full of infinite effulgence, the image of the good soul, is as the eye of this world. I adore this primeval Lord Govinda, in pursuance of whose order the sun performs his journey mounting the wheel of time. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, by whose conferred power are maintained the manifested potencies that are found to exist of all virtues, all vices, the Vedas, the penances, and all jivas, from Brahma to the meanest insect. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of those who are imbued with devotion, and impartially orders for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one's activities of all those who walk in the path of work in accordance with the chain of their previously performed works, no less in the case of the tiny insect that bears the name of Indragopa than in that of Indra, king of the Devas. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, the meditators of whom, by meditating upon him under the sway of faith, amorous passion, natural friendly love, fear, parental affection, delusion, reverence, and willing service, attain to bodily forms befitting the nature of their contemplation. I worship the transcendental seat known as Shwet Dvipa, where, as loving consorts, the Lakshmis, in their unalloyed spiritual essence, practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover. Where every tree is a transcendental purpose tree, where the soil is the purpose gem, all water is nectar, every word is a song, every gate is a dance, the flute is the favorite attendant, effulgence is full of transcendental bliss, and the supreme spiritual entities are all enjoyable and tasty. Where numberless milk cows always emit transcendental oceans of milk, where there is eternal existence of transcendental time, who is ever present and without past or future, and hence is not subject to the quality of passing away, even for the space of half a moment. That realm is known as Goloka only to a very few self-realized souls in this world. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai.
Jai.
Nanda Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
and all the devotees, good health ki jai.
Jai.
Vanchukalpatarubhyascha kripa
Sindhubhya
sindhubhya patitanam
Patitanam
pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
namo
Namo Namaha
namaha.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.